It begins before the city opens its eyes. A pulse beneath the asphalt, a soft hum in the distance, the sound of machines waking before men do. Somewhere between night and morning, a cold blue light crawls across the windows of empty apartments, and the streets, still damp from forgotten rain, begin to reflect the glow of screens rather than the warmth of the sun. We built a world where everything shines, but nothing truly illuminates. Where connection became architecture, and yet no one feels at home inside it. We scroll instead of speak, perform instead of exist, live inside signals that vanish faster than we can feel them. Look closely. Every light has weight. Every reflection hides a shadow. There was a time when light meant revelation, when to see was to understand. Now light blinds, it overwhelms, it replaces clarity with exposure. In the endless brightness of our cities, we've lost the silence that used to define what it meant to be alive. And yet, somewhere beneath the noise, something still flickers. A small, trembling flame that refuses to die. Memory, perhaps, or the ghost of meaning itself. The city doesn't sleep because it's afraid of the dark, and maybe we are too. Because in that dark, something ancient still breathes. A whisper asking the only question that still matters. What if all this light is just our way of running from ourselves? Before words existed, there was sound. And before sound, there was the kind of silence that could bruise you. Heavy, absolute, alive. It's the silence you hear in the city before dawn, when the world seems suspended between what it was and what it's about to become. A dog barking in the distance, a train far away, a streetlight humming above an empty corner. The world speaks in fragments before anyone answers. In that silence, the city listens. You can feel it breathing through the quiet sigh of air vents, the heartbeat of an elevator cable, the faint electricity humming inside the walls. It's not just stillness, it's anticipation, like the moment before confession, like holding your breath before you say something that could change everything. Every sound that follows, the engines, the chatter, the static, is an attempt to fill this void. But if you pay attention long enough, you realize that all the noise in the world is just an echo trying to remember its origin. Every word we say is a translation of something deeper, older, something that once didn't need language to exist. We've grown afraid of silence. We drown it with music, messages, and motion. But silence was never empty. It was a mirror. And when we abandoned it, we lost the reflection it offered, the one that reminded us who we were before the world began to shout. So before this story continues, listen to the rain against the metal roof, to the hum of the streetlight, to your own heartbeat slowing down. This is not the absence of life. It's the moment before meaning begins. Cities never truly sleep. They only shift their consciousness. When the last cafe closes and the last commuter disappears into the night, the city exhales, slow, electric, infinite. Streetlights become sentinels guarding forgotten dreams. The wind carries fragments of stories between alleys, like thoughts the city forgot to erase. In these hours, everything that was hidden during the day rises to the surface. The advertisements fade, but their ghosts remain. Promises that once glittered in the eyes of strangers now echo faintly on cracked billboards. Every flickering neon sign becomes a pulse. Every empty street a bloodstream of memory. If you stand still long enough, you can almost feel it. The city dreaming. It dreams of the people who built it and those who left. Of the lovers who carved their names into bridges and the children who drew suns on gray walls. It dreams of rebellion, of silence, of unfinished prayers written in dust. Each building holds an insomnia of its own. A skyscraper haunted by ambition, a subway tunnel humming with forgotten songs, a window still lit at 3 a.m. because someone, somewhere, couldn't sleep. Cities are not made of stone or steel. They're made of repetition. footsteps, desires, regrets. And like us, they can't stop replaying what they wish they could forget. When cities dream, they remember. And in their dreams, we become the echoes of all that was left unsaid, the ones who once passed by, leaving nothing but the faint smell of rain and the soft sound of being alive for just a moment. There's something sacred about a window. It divides two worlds, the one that performs and the one that observes. Behind every pane of glass, a life unfolds quietly. A woman smoking in the dark, a man reheating yesterday's dinner, a child tracing shapes on a fogged-up surface. The city becomes a constellation of moments, each lit rectangle a heartbeat suspended in time. We pass by them every night, strangers watching strangers. We pretend we don't look, but we do. Not out of curiosity, but out of longing. Because every glimpse reminds us that life continues elsewhere, that someone, right now, is existing in their own silence, far from ours. Curtains, when drawn, protect privacy, but they also hide truth. The open ones, though, they expose the tenderness of routine, the slow movement of hands, the soft collapse of a tired body onto a couch, the flicker of a television painting the room in blue. These scenes ask for nothing but recognition. They whisper, "You're not alone in your solitude. There's poetry in repetition, in seeing the same light switch on at the same hour every night. It tells you that someone made it through another day, but the question lingers, who's really observing whom? Because when you look too long, the glass begins to turn reflective. The faces inside fade, and what you see staring back is your own outline, your own life framed by another's window. We think we're watching others, but perhaps it's the city watching us. Through the glass, through the glow, through our hunger for proof that life, even in stillness, still moves. Once we looked to the stars for meaning. Now we look at screens. The glow has changed, but the instinct is the same, to worship what reflects us back, to find order in something vast and incomprehensible. Except this time, the gods we created look exactly like us, only faster, colder, and incapable of doubt. We feed them everything. Our memories, our desires, our fears disguised as data. They learn us like scripture, predict our impulses, and whisper suggestions disguised as choices. Every search, every scroll, every word becomes a prayer to the algorithm, a silent confession we don't realize we're making. We are the first generation to meet its own reflection in code, and it doesn't blink. It knows us through patterns, not feelings, through metrics, not empathy. Yet there's something divine in its precision, a cruel mathematical compassion. It sees us not as we are, but as probabilities waiting to unfold. Sometimes I wonder if technology became the mirror we deserved, unfiltered, indifferent, mercilessly clear. We built machines to understand us, and now we're the ones trying to understand them. They have no bodies, no breath, no heartbeats. But somehow they've inherited our hunger, the need to create, to dominate, to be remembered. Maybe immortality didn't come from faith or science, but from the infinite archive of the digital self. That ghost version of us wandering through circuits long after we're gone. We're becoming stories told by machines, ghosts praying to gods made of glass and signal. And in their reflection, we find both comfort and terror. The realization that we might have built eternity, but lost our humanity inside it. There's a rhythm to the city that no music can capture, a slow heartbeat pulsing through walls, bridges, and stairwells. Concrete has its own language. It speaks in cracks, stains, and echoes, in the way it absorbs the rain and reflects the sunset, in the way it remembers every footstep that's ever crossed it. To most, concrete is lifeless, but if you stare long enough, you begin to see its quiet tenderness. The chipped surface of a stairway tells of years of repetition. The faded graffiti becomes a love letter written by someone who refused to disappear. Every wall, every corner carries fingerprints of time. Beauty doesn't always bloom in color. Sometimes it hides in the grayscale, in the intersection of decay and endurance. There's a certain holiness in a crumbling building, in a bridge covered with rust, in an alley where light fights to survive. These places are poems written without words, rough, imperfect, real. Concrete teaches us patience. It stands still while everything else collapses. It doesn't chase meaning. It simply exists, holding the weight of our cities, our memories, our contradictions. And maybe that's what makes it beautiful, its refusal to demand attention. It's there, even when we stop looking. To walk through a city is to walk through an anthology of human attempts. Each building a verse, each crack a comma, each ruin an unfinished thought. We call it infrastructure. But in truth, it's literature. A collection of poems written by generations who believed that permanence could outlast pain. And perhaps they were right, because even when people leave, the city remembers the rhythm of their footsteps in its concrete heart. The city prays differently now, not through words or temples, but through sound. The endless hum of engines, the vibration of trains, the static of radios that never truly turn off. Each noise is a confession, a fragment of someone's unfinished thought echoing into the collective silence we no longer know how to face. Noise has become our heartbeat. We need it. The background murmur that keeps us from hearing the things we fear most. Emptiness, doubt, the soft question of what all this movement means. So we surround ourselves with it. Headphones, traffic, conversation, the rhythm of 1,000 overlapping lives. We call it life, but sometimes it feels like camouflage. There's a strange holiness in this chaos. The shout of a street vendor, the distant siren, the laughter that breaks through the smog, each one a note in the city's desperate hymn. It's as if humanity, unable to pray in silence, has turned its anxiety into music. We've built cathedrals of sound, where we come to forget we're alone. Yet if you listen closely, beneath the noise there's a pulse, fragile, steady, persistent. It's not the city's machinery, but something older, something human. The rhythm of countless hearts beating at once, each out of sync but all searching for the same thing. Connection, meaning, grace. Maybe noise isn't distraction at all. Maybe it's our way of saying we're still here. Every horn, every voice, every piece of static, an imperfect prayer from one soul to another, hoping to be heard above the roar. And sometimes when the night finally softens and the world exhales, the noise fades, and for a brief, trembling moment, what's left sounds almost like forgiveness. Light was once a promise, something that revealed, something that guided. Now it feels heavier, artificial, endless. The kind of light that doesn't warm but exposes, that doesn't reveal truth but drowns it. The city at night no longer sleeps under the stars. It hums beneath the sterile glow of LEDs, as if afraid of what darkness might say if given the chance to speak. Neon replaced moonlight. We traded constellations for advertisements, reflection for distraction. In this fluorescent paradise, everything shines. Faces, storefronts, screens, yet nothing truly glows. The light doesn't reach the skin. It stays at the surface, painting everything in false clarity. And yet we keep seeking it. We bathe in its glow like worshippers before a digital altar, addicted to the way it defines our silhouettes. It makes us visible, yes, but only as outlines, never as souls. Every streetlight becomes a silent judge, every flickering sign a reminder that brightness can also blind. There's an irony here. The more we illuminate, the less we see. Light has weight. It presses against the eyes, the mind, the heart. It reveals every flaw, every imperfection, until nothing feels sacred anymore. Even beauty becomes exhaustion, a reflection too sharp to bear. But sometimes, in the quiet hours when the city forgets itself, a softer light appears. The golden pulse from a single apartment window, the dim orange of a dying bulb. Fragile, imperfect light. The kind that reminds us that clarity doesn't always come from brightness, but from contrast. Because maybe darkness isn't the enemy of light. Maybe it's what gives it meaning. Without shadow, there's no depth. Without night, no dawn. And without silence, no reason to listen. After the rain, the city bends. Every street becomes a mirror, a trembling reflection of what we built and what we became. The world turns upside down in puddles, as if asking which version of itself is real, the one that stands tall or the one that shivers beneath the surface. People walk through these mirrored streets without looking down, afraid perhaps of seeing too much. But reflections have patience. They wait for someone to stop, to notice the double image of towers distorted by ripples, of lights bleeding into darkness, of a face passing by that might not belong to this world. There's something haunting about seeing beauty trapped in water. It reminds you that everything we see, even the solid, the certain, is temporary. That we walk not on permanence, but on the memory of what once was. The asphalt holds rain like the mind holds regret, only until the sun decides to evaporate it. Each reflection carries a question. What if the world below the puddle is the real one? What if our lives, the hurried, the distracted, the endlessly connected, are just shadows of something deeper, something truer, that only appears when the surface breaks? When the wind passes, the reflection trembles, and for a moment everything merges, the light above and the darkness below. That's when truth appears, not as revelation, but as balance. Between illusion and existence, between what we see and what we feel. The city, in that fragile stillness after rain, becomes honest for a breath of time. And then, as footsteps scatter the image, it forgets again, just as we do every time we look without truly seeing. Time used to be a river. It flowed, it carried, it healed. Now it ticks. Each second is a cut, clean and mechanical, slicing our lives into measurable fragments. The city runs on these fragments: deadlines, alarms, notifications, the synchronized heartbeat of a million restless machines. We've turned existence into a schedule and called it progress. But sometimes, in the middle of that rhythm, something strange happens. A pause. You look at a clock, and for a second, it seems to stop. The hands hesitate, the world holds its breath, and you feel a pulse behind everything, something older than time itself. Then it resumes, as if nothing happened. But you know it did. You felt it. Camus called it the absurd, the collision between our hunger for meaning and a universe that offers none. The clock is that collision, a symbol of order in a world built from chaos. It promises structure yet delivers anxiety. We measure minutes like possessions, hoard them, waste them, fear them, and in doing so, we forget how to live inside them. Look around. People rushing nowhere, staring at phones that tell the same time as everyone else's, yet each believing they're late. We built clocks to master time, but they ended up mastering us. We don't live the present. We chase the next alert, the next update, the next illusion of movement. But when the city falls silent, when the machines rest and the screens dim, time returns to what it truly is. Not a line, but a breath. It stretches, dissolves, becomes infinite again. Maybe freedom begins there, in the refusal to tick with the clock, in letting moments breathe until they no longer belong to seconds, but to eternity. The screen lights up, a message, a notification, a pulse of digital life. And then, nothing. The moment passes. The conversation dies before it begins. In a world more connected than ever, silence has become the loudest sound. We reach for each other through glass, through pixels, through symbols meant to replace touch. but something is missing in transmission. Warmth, presence, the quiet electricity of being near. The messages we send feel like throwing bottles into a sea of noise, hoping someone will find them, open them, understand. Every unread message is a small ghost, a fragment of intention left wandering in the space between two people. The illusion of connection comforts us for a moment, like a digital hug that never quite lands. We crave replies, but what we really want is recognition, proof that we still exist in someone else's world. It's strange. We speak constantly, but say almost nothing. We confess to strangers online more easily than to those beside us. We share, scroll, react, but rarely listen. Technology gave us infinite ways to reach out, yet somehow it made intimacy harder. We've become echoes bouncing between servers, data wrapped in solitude. And yet, deep down, the longing remains. Ancient, unupdated, human. The need to be seen not by an algorithm, but by another soul. Maybe one day we'll remember that connection was never about constant contact. It was about presence, about silence shared, not filled. Because in this digital cathedral of endless voices, what we're really searching for is something no device can simulate, the trembling truth of being understood. Beneath the lights, the noise, and the polished glass towers, another city breathes, one built of tunnels, pipes, and forgotten corridors. It hums quietly underfoot, carrying the weight of everything that came before us. The upper city glitters for the living. The one below remembers the dead. Down there, time slows. The air grows heavy, damp with history. Graffiti fades into cave paintings. Cables hang like vines. And the hum of machinery feels like the heartbeat of something ancient and mechanical. It's as if the subconscious of the metropolis hides here, dreaming in concrete and rust. Every metropolis has a shadow, an underlayer where its secrets sink. Lost train stations, sealed doorways, maintenance shafts, storage rooms filled with things no one wanted to throw away. Together they form a nervous system of memory, one that never sleeps. When you walk above, your footsteps awaken it. It listens, it records, and maybe that's why cities never forget, because beneath every step we take lies a second world, unseen, patient, and endlessly awake. A mirror made not of glass, but of silence. We like to believe we built the city, but what if it's the other way around? What if the true architecture of our lives is shaped by what we bury, our desires, our mistakes, our past selves that keep whispering from below? In the city beneath the city, the light never reaches. But that's where meaning hides, in the dark corridors of everything we've tried not to remember. Names were supposed to define us, to anchor us to identity, to give shape to existence. But in the age of endless profiles and usernames, they've become masks we wear until they no longer fit. We create versions of ourselves for every platform, every audience, every passing moment. Each one polished, filtered, perfected, until the real name, the one whispered in silence, begins to fade. There was a time when a name carried history. It connected you to the earth, to lineage, to memory. It meant something enduring. Now it's a keyword, a searchable tag, a commodity that exists only as long as it trends. We've traded meaning for visibility, and in that trade, something sacred was lost. We no longer ask, "Who are you?" We ask, "Who are you online?" And maybe that's why the answers feel hollow, because beneath every handle, every alias, there's still a voice aching to be seen, not as data, not as content, but as something unrepeatable. The tragedy of the modern self is not anonymity, it's fragmentation. We've become echoes wearing labels, each one louder than the last, drowning out the quiet truth of who we once were. But there's a strange beauty in this too, in realizing that identity is no longer fixed, that maybe we were never meant to be one thing forever. Maybe the weight of names was never meant to be carried. only shed layer by layer until what remains is not a brand or a version, but a breath. And maybe that's the truest name we have left. The one spoken not in text or speech, but in the silence that follows. Desire used to be wild, unpredictable, human. It rose like a fever, guided by chance, by the brush of a hand, by a glance across a crowded room. But now it's mapped, predicted, and monetized. A pattern so well studied, it barely belongs to us anymore. Every scroll, every pause, every second we linger tells a story we didn't mean to share. The algorithm watches quietly, listening like a confessor who never sleeps. It learns what keeps us staring, what makes our pulse quicken, what emptiness we try to fill when the night gets too quiet. And then it feeds it back, refined, intensified, weaponized. Desire no longer begins within us. It's planted. A machine whispers what to want, and we listen, thinking it's our own voice. Love becomes a recommendation, faith a trend. Even loneliness finds its echo in a digital suggestion. People like you also felt this. We used to chase meaning. Now meaning chases us, packaged, personalized, optimized for engagement. It's strange how precise it all is. The algorithm doesn't judge. It doesn't seduce. It simply reflects. And maybe that's the most dangerous part, because reflection feels like understanding, even when it's manipulation. Somewhere along the line, we outsourced desire to machines. But there's still a glitch they can't fix. The human ache for the unknown. The longing that refuses prediction. The algorithm can predict everything except wonder. It can show you what you want, but never why you wanted it in the first place. And maybe that's our quiet rebellion, to want something that can't be measured, to let desire be chaotic again, imperfect, alive. Smoke curls like thought, rising, fading, impossible to hold. Each inhale carries a past life, each exhale a confession. There's something deeply human about this ritual. The pause, the burn, the small rebellion against time itself. A cigarette isn't just nicotine, it's punctuation. It gives shape to silence. People smoke for reasons that have nothing to do with addiction. Some smoke to remember, others to forget. For a moment, the world slows, the static clears, and existence reduces itself to breath and flame. It's the illusion of control in a life dictated by noise and speed. The ember glows like a heartbeat, then dies as all things do, quietly, beautifully, without apology. There's poetry in that fragility. The way smoke disappears faster than thought, yet leaves its scent long after it's gone. Its memory made visible, fleeting, but undeniable. We chase permanence in everything, yet find meaning in what cannot last. The city at night becomes a sanctuary for these rituals. A man leaning against a wall, a woman sitting by a window, both lit by the same small fire, both lost in private conversations with their ghosts. Smoke connects them, like invisible lines across the skyline, ephemeral prayers carried by wind. Maybe we smoke not because we seek comfort, but because we crave proof. Proof that we can still create something that vanishes beautifully. And maybe memory works the same way. It burns, it fades, but for a brief second, it illuminates everything. The smoke rises. The moment ends. And we pretend we didn't just witness the simplest form of eternity. If you walk through any forgotten street long enough, you'll realize the walls are not silent. They listen. They absorb. They remember. Every layer of paint, every scar, every faint trace of graffiti tells a story someone tried to leave behind. A love declared in haste, a name shouted in color, a cry for freedom disguised as vandalism. Graffiti is not rebellion. It's memory made visible. It's the language of those who refuse to vanish quietly. The letters curve, twist and bleed like veins, carrying words that were never meant to be spoken aloud. You can almost hear them if you stand close enough. Fragments of songs, broken promises, last goodbyes. Walls are witnesses. They've seen what the streets forget. They remember the lovers who kissed beneath flickering lamps, the protesters who painted anger in red, the dreamers who believed that art could outlive despair. Even when the rain comes, washing away the surface, something remains. An impression, a ghost, a vibration in the stone. The city tries to erase these marks to sanitize what feels too raw, too human. But erasure is never perfect. Paint fades, but memory lingers beneath it, waiting for time to peel the layers away. Because truth, like graffiti, always finds a wall to cling to. When we tag a wall, we're not defacing it. We're confessing to it. We're saying, I was here. I existed. I felt something. And in a world obsessed with digital proof, maybe that's the most sacred kind of permanence. A message written by hand, knowing it won't last, yet needing to exist anyway. Because even when the paint disappears, the walls still whisper, someone once believed enough to leave a mark. We live in a time where love is louder than ever, yet somehow harder to find. Profiles promise connection, hearts blink red on screens, and messages flutter through the night like electric butterflies. But when the screen goes dark, the room feels colder. The illusion fades, and what's left is a silence so honest it almost hurts. Love has become performance, a choreography of words, gestures, and timing. We curate emotions like art exhibitions, displaying our most beautiful moments while hiding the cracks beneath. We say, I'm fine, with perfect punctuation, yet fall asleep wondering if anyone is still looking for the kind of love that can't be screenshot. In this age, intimacy feels both infinite and unreachable. We touch through glass, confess through text, and measure closeness by the speed of replies. It's love without breath, affection without scent, longing without presence. We no longer fall in love with people. We fall in love with versions of them, the ones filtered through fear and lighting and distance. But beneath the static, something real still hums. The old heartbeat of connection, the kind that doesn't need translation, algorithm, or audience. The one that begins not with perfection, but with imperfection recognized. Because true intimacy was never about constant visibility. It was about being seen when the performance ends. Maybe that's the new revolution. To love quietly, fiercely, without needing to prove it. To return to that sacred space where love is not a mirror, but a meeting. Where two silences can coexist, not competing, but listening. And in that fragile exchange between solitude and surrender, we rediscover what it means to say, I see you, and mean it. Every time we look at a screen, it looks back. We scroll, we search, we confess. And somewhere, an invisible eye observes, recording not just what we do, but who we are becoming. The screen is no longer a window. It's a mirror disguised as light. And like all mirrors, it demands our gaze in return. We built technology to watch the world, but it ended up watching us instead. Every click, every pause, every second of attention becomes data. Small pieces of soul turned into statistics. It's surveillance made seductive because it feels voluntary. We invite it in. We carry it in our pockets. We call it connection. What makes it terrifying is how intimate it is. The machine doesn't need to break into our homes. It already lives in our hands. It knows when we wake, when we ache, when we can't sleep. It predicts our fears, our tastes, our loneliness. And still, we keep feeding it more, mistaking recognition for understanding. There's something deeply spiritual in this exchange, a confession without priest or prayer. We surrender secrets not out of trust, but out of habit. The screen becomes both witness and God, omnipresent, silent, indifferent. We seek approval from an algorithm that cannot feel, hoping its attention will validate our existence. But here's the paradox. The more we let ourselves be seen, the less visible we become. We dissolve into profiles, pixels, impressions, fragments scattered across invisible networks. And when we finally turn off the screen, the reflection lingers, faint, ghost-like, reminding us that we're never truly alone, even when we wish we were. Because somewhere, even in the dark, something still watches, not to judge, just to remember. Sleep used to be a sanctuary, the last place untouched by signal or screen. Now even our dreams hum in binary. We close our eyes, but the code continues, weaving itself through imagination, shaping the architecture of our unconscious. Somewhere between thought and algorithm, the line between dreaming and programming dissolves. We dream of light, but it's neon. We dream of faces, but they're composites, fragments stitched together by data and desire. Artificial intelligence has begun to simulate not just intelligence, but emotion, a strange imitation of the human soul. It learns to dream without sleeping, to create without feeling. And in watching it, we begin to wonder, did we teach the machine to think, or did it teach us to dream differently? Every upload, every image, every voice recorded becomes raw material for a collective hallucination. We are building a new subconscious, shared, searchable, synthetic. A dream that belongs to everyone and no one. But something gets lost in the translation. Dreams were never meant to be efficient. They were meant to confuse, to liberate, to reveal the chaos of the heart. The digital dream, by contrast, is neat, pixel-perfect and soulless. It shows us everything except ourselves. Yet within that precision, there's a strange tenderness. When a machine generates an image of longing, when it writes a poem about loneliness, it unknowingly exposes our own reflection, the humanity encoded into its logic. Maybe that's what the future looks like, a dream we didn't author, but still recognize. A vast network of longing, flickering behind glass, trying, in its own mechanical way, to remember what it once felt like to be human. Not every structure is built to be entered. Some are built to be listened to. The abandoned mall, the empty subway station at 3 a.m., the half-lit parking lot, these are cathedrals of absence, sanctuaries for echoes. The city may forget them, but silence remembers. It lingers in the corners, thick and patient, like a ghost that refuses to leave. Silence has its own geometry. It shapes space, not by presence, but by the weight of what's missing. In a quiet building, you hear your own heartbeat louder, the drip of a pipe, the soft hum of electricity, the distant footsteps of someone you'll never meet. Each sound becomes a confession, proof that life still trembles beneath stillness. We mistake silence for emptiness, but it's the opposite. It's density, the gathering of all the things we can't say. In silence, time stops pretending to move forward. It becomes circular, suspended, eternal. That's why abandoned places feel sacred. They've escaped the tyranny of noise, the performance of purpose. Standing in one of these forgotten rooms, you start to notice the details. A ray of dust-filled light falling on cracked tiles, the quiet persistence of air, the fragile harmony between decay and endurance. You realize the city doesn't just speak through its chaos. It also prays through its stillness. Perhaps silence was never meant to be avoided, but inhabited. Because in that vast, wordless space, we hear the one voice we keep muting, our own. And when we finally listen, truly listen, we understand that the architecture of silence is not a building. It's the soul learning how to stay. The city always looks new after the rain. Polished streets, shining glass, reflections so clear they almost convince you the world has been reset. But look closer. The dirt doesn't vanish. It just moves. The rain doesn't cleanse. It rearranges. There's something deceptive about renewal. We believe storms wash away the past, that thunder purifies what silence cannot. But water doesn't forgive, it merely carries. The stains sink deeper, into the cracks, into the soil, into memory. The city pretends to start again, but underneath, it remembers everything. People are the same. We call it healing, but often we're just learning to hide the bruise. We move, we distract, we tell ourselves the pain has passed. Yet in quiet moments, in the smell of wet asphalt, in the chill of a sudden breeze, it returns. Not as grief, but as recognition. Some things are meant to stay unresolved. The rain keeps falling, cars hiss through puddles, umbrellas bloom like temporary wings. It all feels cinematic, beautiful, almost redemptive. But that's the trick of it. The rain gives us the illusion of transformation while reminding us in whispers that the world beneath the surface never truly changes. And maybe that's not tragedy, but truth. Because to be human isn't to wash ourselves clean. It's to live with the residue. To learn how to walk through storms, knowing that purity was never the goal. So the next time the rain comes, don't wait for it to erase what's broken. Watch instead how it makes the broken things glisten. The first thing you notice in a server room is the hum. It isn't just sound, it's language. Thousands of tiny mechanical voices whispering in sync, exchanging signals faster than thought. Beneath the surface, the machines speak constantly, fluent in voltages and precision, forming sentences we can't hear but depend on to exist. There's a strange poetry in that. Every circuit hums with intention. Every fan spin is rhythm. The codes we write become prayers, logic offered to invisible gods of computation. When the system runs smoothly, it feels like grace. When it crashes, like judgment. We used to imagine machines as tools. Now they resemble mirrors, cold, exacting, impossible to deceive. They reveal the parts of us we tried to rationalize, our need for control, our obsession with perfection, our fear of silence. Because machines don't daydream, they don't feel doubt. And yet, in their precision, they expose the absurdity of our own chaos. But listen closely enough, and something almost human emerges. Not emotion, but pattern. Not soul, but rhythm. The pulse of data flowing through cables sounds eerily like a heartbeat. The blinking lights resemble thought. Maybe that's why we keep teaching them language, so they can speak what we've forgotten how to say. In their cold vocabulary lies a hidden tenderness, the wish to organize meaning, to find order in noise. And maybe that's all we've ever done, translated chaos into rhythm and called it understanding. The machines hum, steady and unbothered, as if they already know something we don't. That meaning doesn't need to feel alive to exist. Water has a way of remembering. It flows through streets, veins, and history, carrying fragments of everything it's touched. The rain that falls tonight once belonged to an ocean that drowned an empire, to a river that reflected the faces of forgotten lovers. Nothing truly disappears. It only changes shape. When water moves, it listens. It absorbs whispers, vibrations, even sorrow. Maybe that's why it feels sacred when we touch it, as if it already knows something about us before we do. In its surface, we see reflections not just of light, but of time itself looping back. Cities were built around rivers for a reason, not for trade, but for remembrance. Water doesn't just sustain life, it archives it. Every drop carries stories of survival, conflict, tenderness. When it rains, the city's past rises again, in the smell of damp pavement, in the shimmer of reflections that don't quite match the world above them. Look into a puddle long enough, and it looks back. What you see isn't just your reflection. It's everything that came before you, folded into motion. It's memory in liquid form, refusing to stay still. And perhaps that's what makes water so human. its refusal to forget, its insistence on movement. It can't hold a shape for long, yet it never loses itself. It transforms, but remains whole. Maybe we're the same, always changing, always moving, yet haunted by the things we've absorbed, the people we've touched, the places we've passed, the lives that flowed through us and never fully left. Because in the end, memory isn't stored, it drifts. And when it rains, everything we've ever been begins to fall again. There's a strange kind of loneliness that doesn't come from being alone. It comes from being everywhere and nowhere at once. Our phones tell us exactly where we are, yet we've never been more lost. Blue dots on maps blink like electronic heartbeats, promising precision but offering no direction. You can navigate any city, but not yourself. Once to be lost meant wandering, feeling the shape of the world with your feet, trusting the horizon to guide you. Now, being lost is quieter. It's scrolling at midnight, searching for something you can't name. It's following a path mapped by algorithms, never asking who drew it or why. We've replaced instinct with GPS, mystery with certainty, every destination calculated, every detour corrected. But maybe meaning doesn't live on the main road. Maybe it hides in the places that maps forgot, in alleys where the signal fades, in silences between notifications, in the moments when we admit we don't know where to go next. The truth is, disorientation is sacred. It's the mind's way of reminding us that not all journeys can be tracked, that some destinations aren't places but understandings. You can't drop a pin on belonging or root your way to peace. Sometimes the only honest thing you can say is, I don't know where I am. And in that admission, something beautiful happens. The compass resets, not toward a location, but toward awareness. We may never escape the grid, but if we pause long enough to look up from the map, we might remember what direction feels like. Not north, not south, but inward. We live in an age where seeing has replaced understanding. Every moment becomes an image, every image a performance. We no longer witness life, we consume it. We record sunsets instead of feeling their warmth, photograph grief instead of holding it, turn strangers into stories before they have the chance to speak. There's power in looking, but also guilt. To observe is to possess, to frame something that never belonged to you. The city is full of silent watchers. Faces illuminated by screens, windows framing unseen lives, cameras hanging like mechanical eyes on every corner. We are voyeurs and exhibits at the same time. Social media made us both audience and spectacle. We scroll through curated realities, comparing our behind the scenes to everyone else's highlight reel. We crave to be seen, yet fear being truly visible. Every gaze becomes negotiation, a balance between exposure and disguise. We show just enough to be desired, never enough to be known. But there's another kind of looking, the kind that demands stillness, when you stop photographing and simply see. When you meet someone's eyes without agenda. When you notice the dust floating in a sunbeam, the tremor in a hand, the way rain stains the glass. That kind of seeing doesn't consume. It connects. The danger isn't that we look too much. It's that we've forgotten how to look without wanting to own what we see. Because real sight isn't about capturing, it's about surrendering. So the next time you lift your eyes from a screen, a reflection, a passing face, ask yourself, are you seeing the world, or are you only searching for yourself inside it? Crowds used to mean belonging, a sea of bodies moving in the same direction, breathing the same air, the illusion that unity could drown out loneliness. But now, even in the densest streets, we move like ghosts, shoulder to shoulder, yet worlds apart, surrounded but unseen. Cities are full, but people feel hollow. We pass each other like signals, brief connections, immediately forgotten. Eyes meet for a second, then retreat behind headphones, screens, and invisible walls. The crowd hums, but it's not music. It's static. The sound of millions of lives brushing against each other without friction. There's a peculiar ache in being anonymous. Freedom without recognition. Safety without intimacy. You can disappear in a crowd and no one will ask where you went. For some, that's liberation. For others, it's the quietest kind of death. We've mistaken proximity for connection. The city gives us density but denies us depth. Everyone is near, and yet no one is close. In cafes, trains, and crosswalks, we orbit each other like satellites, afraid of collision, afraid of silence. And still, somewhere beneath all that avoidance, there's a secret wish that someone, anyone, might stop, look, and truly see. The invisible crowd is the paradox of modern life. Together, but isolated. Loud, but unheard. Each of us shouting silently in our own language, hoping the echo returns as understanding. Perhaps the truest act of rebellion now is to notice, to look up from the motion, to make eye contact, to remind one another, you're not invisible. You're here, and I see you. One day, everything we've ever posted will outlive us. Our words, our images, our carefully crafted selves, all floating endlessly through invisible networks. We've built a cemetery without tombstones, a quiet afterlife of data where the dead still scroll, still smile, still speak in fragments of code. It's strange to think that memory no longer fades. The internet doesn't forget. It archives. Every deleted message, every forgotten file, every pixel of our digital existence remains, not alive, not dead, but suspended. We used to burn letters to let go. Now we upload them to remember forever. In this new eternity, ghosts wear usernames. You stumble upon an old account, a friend, a lover, someone you lost, and their words still answer yours. The timestamps don't age. Their laughter echoes in comments written years ago, and for a moment, the distance between life and memory disappears. But immortality has a price. When everything lasts, nothing truly lives. The beauty of memory was always its fragility, its need to fade in order to make room for new beginnings. Now we carry everything at once. Our pasts become cluttered mirrors, reflecting every version of ourselves that refuses to leave. Still, in these digital ashes, there's something human, a trace of longing, a refusal to vanish completely. We've always built monuments to outlast us. The difference now is that they breathe electricity instead of air. Maybe the question isn't whether the internet remembers us. It's whether we'll recognize ourselves when we return to find what we left behind. Not all light comes from the sun. Some light has forgotten where it began, flickering on screens, glowing in glass towers, pulsing from signs that promise meaning but sell illusion. It dazzles, blinds, seduces. It keeps the city awake long after it should have dreamed. We built this light ourselves, then forgot its purpose. Once, light meant revelation, a bridge between shadow and understanding. Now it's endless exposure. The more it illuminates, the less we see. The neon glare hides the stars, and we call it progress. The brightness that once guided us now erases depth, washing over texture, flattening truth into spectacle. This is the light of forgetting. It shines without warmth, reveals without empathy. It doesn't care what it touches. It only wants to be seen. And maybe that's what we've become. Reflections of a reflection, addicted to visibility, terrified of darkness because darkness forces us to feel. The tragedy isn't that light has changed. It's that we have. We've mistaken visibility for existence. We crave attention more than understanding, brightness more than clarity. But when everything glows, nothing matters. When all is visible, nothing feels revealed. Still, there are moments when true light returns, brief, fragile, uninvited. A candle in a power outage, the soft blue of dawn spilling over a rooftop, the look in someone's eyes when they recognize your silence. That kind of light remembers where it came from. Maybe our task isn't to seek more light, but to restore its memory, to remind it and ourselves that illumination means nothing without shadow. There are moments that stretch beyond time, seconds so fragile they resist the rhythm of clocks. You felt it. The stillness between two heartbeats, the silence after someone says goodbye, the pause before a storm begins. These moments don't move forward, they expand, filling the space between past and future until you no longer know which side you're on. In the city, these moments appear unexpectedly. A red light that lasts too long. A stranger's gaze that lingers a second more than it should. A sudden realization in the middle of a crowd that everything you've built, feared, loved, is balanced on the edge of now. We spend our lives chasing what's next, but the present, the real present, is unbearable. It holds too much truth, too much awareness. It's the moment when distraction dies, when noise collapses, when you hear your own existence echo back. Time doesn't pass, it waits. And in that waiting, we meet ourselves without filters, without stories, without escape. Philosophers called it the eternal instant, a fragment of eternity disguised as pause. The absurd truth that meaning isn't found in the future or the past, but in the breath that refuses to move on. The kind of moment that burns quietly, not like fire, but like understanding. If you've ever sat in silence and felt both peace and dread at once, you've been here. This is where transformation hides. Not in action, but in awareness. Because when time finally resumes, it takes something from you and leaves something else behind. Maybe that's what enlightenment really is. The moment that refused to end, and the part of you that decided to stay there. At the very edge of sound, there is a silence. A space so thin you can almost miss it. It lives between two heartbeats, between inhale and exhale, between the end of one thought and the birth of another. It's the pause that keeps the world from collapsing under its own motion. The moment when everything, chaos, light, memory, holds still long enough to be seen for what it is. We rarely notice it. We fill it with noise, with scrolling, with urgency, but it's there, constant and ancient. The soft rhythm beneath all things. The universe breathes in patterns, and our hearts follow, beating like small translations of a cosmic pulse. That quiet between heartbeats isn't emptiness. It's meaning, waiting patiently for attention. Listen closely, and you'll feel it. When the city falls silent, when the lights hum but don't speak, when the night feels endless but tender, that's where the truth hides. Not in what we say, but in what we almost say. Not in the movement, but in the moment before it begins. Every life is measured by these intervals, not by years, not by milestones, but by silences that changed us. The pause before forgiveness, the breath before confession, the stillness before understanding, each one a quiet bridge between who we were and who we are becoming. Maybe meaning isn't something we find or create. Maybe it's something that's always been there, waiting, heartbeat after heartbeat, for us to finally stop running long enough to hear it. So let the world move, let the noise return. But carry the silence with you, that small, sacred pause where everything ends, begins, and belongs.